Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about the Tokyo sarin gas attacks. Now in part 1 we discussed the logistics of how the attacks went down, but in part 2 we're going to be discussing the cult that perpetrated these attacks. And right now we're going to be discussing sarin gas, why it is so especially cruel and unusual. So just to begin this segment, let's go to a video again narrated by my friend Tina.
Death by exposure to sarin is incredibly grim. The Atlantic explains, within seconds of exposure to sarin, we notice the immediate effects of acetylcholine buildup. First, our smooth muscles and secretions go crazy. The nerves to those areas keep firing, keep telling them to go. The nose runs, the eyes cry, the mouth drools and vomits, and bowels and bladder evacuate themselves. It is not a dignified state. Since sarin has no smell or taste, the person may very well have no idea what's going on. Their chest tightens, vision blurs. If the exposure was great enough, that can progress to convulsions, paralysis, and death within 1 to 10 minutes.
It's pretty awful, and we're just, for the sake of this program, just gonna say because it's kind of a tongue twister of a name. So the cult is named Their sarin was not distilled correctly, not very well.
No Walter White.
And so it actually wasn't odorless.
Exactly what I thought. I was like, it's Breaking Bad. They didn't get the blue stuff.
Got to it first.
But it wasn't odorless. Some of the people in the subway described the smell of like a pungent mustard. Some described the smell of burnt rubber or just a burning sensation.
Well, what's interesting is this is one of those rare cults with like a ministry of science. They had a lot of the individuals who were involved with it were extremely educated. There was a doctor, was one of the guys doing it. Some were graduate students.
Science graduates apparently is what it was. Like a lot of engineers, and that was one of the things that you heard. Things you see like, oh, like scientists did this, but it was like computer scientists and like not biologists and chemists. Like they didn't have like a. It was just he very much targeted like smart people, smart educated people, and then they just figured out how to synthesize this gas or isolate this gas, and not well.
And they by no means created sarin at all. In fact, just to be clear, sarin was discovered, as I understand, by the Nazis when they were looking into establishing themselves in chemical warfare. And it was discovered because of something that it would do to insects and how it would affect the nervous system of insects. And then they wanted to synthesize it for chemical warfare. Even though the Nazis didn't actually use sarin, it was first used by Saddam Hussein. And then I suppose because of how that went, saw it and decided that that worked. Let's try that out.
Those are some cool people to get your ideas from, is Nazis and Saddam Hussein.
Well, hey, the leader of his name was Shoko Asahara. He's actually still alive today. It was a professed admirer of Hitler. So that kind of takes us into this cult. Obviously, the way that they were carrying out this attack was cruel, awful. It's not a dignified way to die, as we've heard. So what do we know about this cult? Were these cruel people? Because as I understand, their belief system was some sort of a hodgepodge of yoga and Buddhism and Hinduism, and then a mix of doomsday.
Yeah, and a lot of LSD. The guy did a lot of LSD and can encourage people to do it as well. It's I mean, it seems like it's cults have a certain appeal to people who are seeking happiness. And if you read culturally in Japan, there's a lot of like salarymen who work themselves very difficult. Everyone's trying to do their job very well, and the work week is much longer, and it's difficult to find that kind of happiness. I can see how this would appeal to folks who are kind of lost in that shuffle, as any cult would.
I feel like if we had a longer episode and prepared for it, we could kind of build like the 5 pillars of cults, and it's combining random religions, definitely giving people LSD, and like 2 or 3 other things. It's such a common thing of
charismatic
leader. Like let's take some in the West, let's take some Eastern esotericism and apply it to Christianity or our own like more Western beliefs. And what was interesting is seeing this from a more like Eastern perspective is he added like Christian esotericism into like Buddhism to create this kind of hodgepodge of like, this is the true way. We've combined the big faiths of the world to find the real truth. Because I think the cult translates to like Supreme Truth.
Supreme Truth, yeah.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting to me about this cult is there's what he told his followers he was accomplishing, and then this very cynical, what he's actually accomplishing with each attack. Like this cult carried out a previous attack a year before, a couple years before, and in it he attacked essentially a group of judges who were about to make a big decision against him. And he was able to hide that it was him. And for this, he also was conveniently making it so that maybe the police would be distracted and not raid his compound.
Yeah, and something that really struck me is that he wanted there to be a World War III, and you see this in some of his speeches. Doomsday was a good thing. You know, we always think of it as, oh no, the apocalypse, like what are you gonna do in the apocalypse? How are you gonna stay safe? And he and his followers, as he would preach, the apocalypse is great. I can't wait, that's the day that we get saved and that we will be proven to be righteous, those true believers that follow me. So he really wanted this attack in part because he wanted to divert attention away from but also because he thought that perhaps if it began World War III, if the US got involved, that would lead to this ultimate goal of achieving enlightenment.
Unlocking your superpowers.
A lot of these cults, and I always do this when I'm gonna go a little wider, a lot of these cults, what their belief system is, when a cult separates itself from the place where those people are from, they're saying, our society is already dead. And we're just like walking around in like the zombie corpse of like our once ancient great society, and let's separate, because when it burns down, then we will be fine and we will be king of the ashes. And that's what like Manson talked about, that's what this guy is talking about, this is what Jonestown was talking about, is all this idea of if we can get away from the world, they're all going to die. But in this case, he wanted to start it.
Yeah.
He wanted to be the catalyst for this thing, so that then he could rule Japan. He would be the emperor of Japan or whatever supreme thing he wanted to be for himself.
Leader.
A lot of the times when you hear about like a cult, you think there's a compound with a few hundred people in it.
Yeah.
The idea that
Bad farm.
that this cult had 10,000 followers in Japan and up to 40,000 followers in Russia is crazy to me. And then also they're building out not only this group of folks who are wearing white and doing yoga and trying to, you know,
separate
levitate.
themselves from materialism. That was a big thing that they would preach, you know, material wealth and the joys of the flesh are not for us, we are enlightened.
You know, after World War II, America was like, here's capitalism, here's the economy, here's how you should set everything up. And you know, that's why I was able to buy this Thrasher hat in Harajuku. Like, this is a magazine I read when I was like 9. You know, and there's a very easy way to wrap your head around folks wanting to reject that and say like, what's it all about? And you hear that here. They also were building up, they had bought a military helicopter that would have been capable of carrying out an even bigger attack.
We were so lucky at how almost comically incompetent this group was, from trying to make automatic weapons and they tried to make thousands of automatic weapons and got to the grand total of 1 to the sarin gas that they had was enough to kill, and I don't have an exact number.
The number is 4.2 million.
Yeah.
They had enough sarin gas that if it had been distilled correctly, distributed in a way,
perfect
way, they would have killed 4.2 million people.
And then with a military helicopter, I mean, they drove around with botulism or botula strain, drove around like the Japanese main government building, and did all of these things, and it was, you just see time and time again, and it just did not work. Like every time, and we would live in a different world if this guy had managed to take over a country.
Yeah.
And he could have if he had done any of these plans successfully.
But let's talk about why Shoko Asahara was a compelling cult leader. One thing that you were talking about, Jack, and there's a photo of this, he said that he could levitate, but he couldn't levitate.
He could jump while sitting, which is pretty crazy.
I've seen a documentary series that featured a sect of yoga that teaches people how to levitate, and it is people sitting, pretzel-legged, and then they go like this, and then what's great is they use this magic of the photograph to capture a moment when you are jumping.
When they're very clearly in a pained, like they're clearly like working, like you can see in their face. It's not even cool.
But
like,
you know,
it would just be a bunch of work.
You know how he can prove that he flew? In the anime. So Jack, if you can just describe a little bit about this anime that was produced by the cult that features Shoko Asahara in sort of a Jesus-y type role.
A Christ-like
figure for sure. And then also a little bit like Mufasa from The Lion King when you see him speaking to a small girl, but it's like him speaking in the clouds.
It's such an odd video because, and I don't really watch any anime. I actually like have a joke with Hassan Piker from TYT.
Name drop.
Where he just describes animes to me. I'm like, I never want to experience that. But it's so bizarre because when you have something very modern about like religion is all like so old, and then it's like, oh, here's like the anime that like Jesus produced so that you would follow Jesus. It's such a bizarre statement of like Moses had the 10 commandments, but not everyone could read at the time, so you could watch this anime
but like,
and kind of get a feel for it.
Jesus did have a PR department. We just call them the apostles.
I'm totally wrong. Holy shit, he's right.
But that's the thing, is you have evangelizing this thing. It's just now folks can take advantage of all of that. The other thing is, though, you normally see folks speaking on behalf of a departed Messiah.
And this guy's alive overseeing this cartoon.
The guy's like, if you will watch me fly on VHS.
Oh man, well, I think that's everything that we can get to about the cult of
They also made masks about him.
What?
They made masks about him and wore them out. So it's so deeply unsettling.
No, it's true. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot about this cult that when I was poring over it, and you and I have been texting leading up to the show.
Just
Sorry,
nonstop.
Brett, you weren't on that group.
I got a text being like, you're still coming, right?
There's a lot to get into. It's all kind of strange and messed up and warped, and we'd love to hear what you guys found about this cult in the comment section below. They still exist today, and in part 3, we're gonna be talking about what were the effects of this senseless attack in Tokyo. Stay with us, we'll see you then.